Hello, everybody. My name is Michael O'Hara, and I'm a four-time Grammy nominee and two-time American Music Award nominee for songwriting and record production. I'll never forget, it was, 3 days before my 37th birthday, and I had heard about this incredible movie, the documentary, Paris is Burning, and I decided that I had to see it. So I went to the theater not really knowing what I was going to see, but very quickly, I was captivated with all of the different people and characters in it, and it opened up that enchanted world that I'm sorry to say I knew very little about, but I got a quick education. And also very quickly, one of the characters that was in that movie was Octavia St. Laurent. And for me, I don't know, she just lit up my soul with her presence, her beauty, her honesty, her horror sense, and just the fun that she seemed to have in spite of everything. And so I went away from that completely, I don't know, devastated in a way, but in the best way. And I just thought, boy, I don't know anything about this world, but boy, they really took me on a journey. And so, as I said in the beginning, it was 3 days before my 37th birthday, and friends were giving me a birthday party, and one of the organizers said, Michael, if there was one person that we could invite as your guest that you would want in the whole world, who would that be? And without even thinking, I said, Octavia St. Laurent. Do you know her? And the organizer said, oh, I know her very well. I'll call her. She'll come. And so then 3 days later was my birthday party. And everybody treated me so wonderfully and was packed and everything. And all of a sudden, I guess it was cake time. And out comes Octavia St. Laurent on the shoulder of her boyfriend at the time, and this guy was, you know, an Atlas type of man, and there he was just holding on her shoulder, and she had my cake lit on his shoulder up in the air and saying happy birthday to me. Well, I cried because of the gesture, and it was wonderful. And then once we all, started eating cake and everything, she said, Michael, can I talk to you? And I said, sure. So we went into the study, and I closed the doors and everything, and I said, what can I do for you, dear? And she said, well, you just seem to have, yourself so together and blah, 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 blah. And I'm a singer as well and a performer and everything like that. And I told her, I know, I saw the movie and stuff. We kind of kikied for a while. But suddenly she looked at me and she said, do you mind if I call you Daddy? And I said, without reservation, I said, sure, daughter. Sure, I'll be your father. And then she taught me a lot more about the dichotomy of the kids that, have to run away to be who they are, and they need parents, and that she was the mother of the House of St. Laurent, and hence her name and stuff like that. So the more she began calling me on the phone, and we would talk, and she would share her problems and questions with me. And then she very quickly let me know that she could sing. And she sang over the phone, and I said, wow. Well, I was not only what I told you I did, but I had a record company with the most amazing woman, Denise Rich. And it was my intention to bring Octavia to Mighty Productions, Michael Denise Productions, in order to record her and to, make her an artist, because I felt that she had a lot of potential and that we might be able to take her global. And so then I knew the writer, singer extraordinaire, Jericho D'Angelo. And I told him about Octavia, and I introduced her to him. But all of a sudden, this title came into my head, Queen of the Underground. And naturally, I wanted it to be a dance song, because that's the dance world, And so we began to write it, and then I brought Octavia into the studio as I was recording the tracks for it, and I began to mouth it and all like that. And then this lady just took it over. She just put everything in it. I mean, one of the most amazing moments is when all of a sudden, light and darkness, you will kneel. And both Jericho and I, we were shocked at that other side of her, And if ever there was a duality of spirits and souls, it was Octavia St. Laurent. Well, I went many a year with her as my daughter. Like I said, she would come and stay with me when she was ill and to convalesce. And, you know, I was very blessed to be a father. I've never had children of my body before in my life. So she was the closest thing I would ever and will ever have to a daughter. But every time she was always so vivacious and so gorgeous, and I saw her with or without makeup, and she was still beautiful without makeup. But when she got all done up, my God, you know, there was not a man around, gay, straight, bi, whatever, that just didn't fall all over themselves. As a matter of fact, my own father, who was one of the straightest men I ever knew in my life, he came with my mother to visit. Every year they would come and spend 2 weeks with me, whatever city I was living in. And I introduced my mother and father to Octavia St. Laurent, and my father's mouth was hanging open. And my late mother said, "Honey, close your mouth, you're catching flies." I'll never forget that. And Octavia just laughed, and she was, you know, so sweet to my father, and she kept telling him, "Oh, you're so cute," and she'd play with his cheeks and all like that. And the whole time I kept behind her, I was going, "Don't do that, he's losing it." But anyway, when my mother had basically had it with my father flirting with Octavia, she said, "You're gonna have to do something about your friend." So I told my father, I said, "Daddy, Octavia is not what you think." He goes, "What do you mean? She's gorgeous." I can talk like my father too. And I said, "Yes, she is inside and out." I said, "But she was born a hermaphrodite. She wasn't born a full woman." He goes, "I don't understand what you mean, that beautiful girl." I said, "Daddy, I'm gonna tell you like Mama, put your tongue in your mouth and understand what I'm telling you. She was born a hermaphrodite." And Octavia very quickly in our relationship had explained to me that she was born hermaphrodite when, you know, as a child, as a baby, I should say, and that her parents decided not to, you know, change her gender one way or the other, though they were given the opportunity to do that. And so Octavia would also explain that she was glad because she got to play the dual roles of male and female, or female and male, whatever you want to say. And so I always found her not only captivating as an individual and a human being, but just the extraordinary soul and heart and understanding of who she was. And she never was anything less than herself. Here's the last thing out of many things I could share with you about my daughter. All through this, you got to remember, she always called me Daddy, and I always called her daughter. Well, I invited her across the river to some friends, some dear friends of mine's house, their parents' house, for a 4th of July picnic. And see, being the father, and these were what I thought real straight people, I said, "Octavia, now, you know, tone it down just a bit for Daddy. And I really want to enjoy this holiday of our nation's freedom, you know, with you." Octavia shows up, and she's with her girlfriend, who is also a transvestite or in a different stage of changing. And they were in the tightest, skimpiest, most revealing bathing suits that you could ever imagine, okay? And I know you're starting to, and you need it. Anyway, she comes in, and they had other accoutrements, I call it, you know, little, you know, things to put over themselves. So I kept trying to get them to keep their shawls on unless they were in the pool, but they just jumped in, and their suits became transparent with water. And I'm thinking to myself, Jesus, my friends are gonna kill me. But my friends, absolutely, the parents and everybody and the grandparents, they fell in love with Octavia and her friend. And why should I have worried? But that was, as a father, I worried for her about things like that. But again, as I said in the beginning, I didn't know much about that world. But she she taught me about the gay world because I have nothing to hide. I was always bisexual and, sleep with men and women or women and men together, But I didn't know the quote unquote gay world, the ballroom world that she took me into. Now today we have such wonderful, productions as Pose that is exposing that whole world and time. But, Octavia knew Madonna and everything. They kind of worked together in the beginning. And so the whole voguing and everything, she took me to so many of the balls. And then I, in turn, asked her if I could bring my friends to the balls with us. And she said, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. And so we spent a lot of time with all of the children of the balls in that era and stuff. And I got to know many of them. And so the last thing I want to say is there was a song I wrote called I Never Knew. And it was in my musical gospel opera called Isle of Dreams. And Octavia, absolutely, this was towards the end of her life. She fell in love with that particular song and she begged me. She said, Daddy, please let me record that song. And for those of you in the know, and for those of you who don't know, she had an amazing voice and was an amazing performer. And so I knew she was very ill, and that was kind of like her last wish. And I told her, of course, daughter, you can record that song. Because by then she had another handle, which was Octavia, Heavenly Angel. And now that she's been gone all this time, and at that moment, I understood, I could see that she was transitioning in her spirit and in her soul. And so I planned to, take her into the studio and record it. But she started having bouts and being very ill and in and out of the hospital and everything. And I was living in a different city at the time. I had left New York, and we kept in contact. At least once a week we would talk, and she'd say, Daddy, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to survive, because the one thing that's holding me together is the thought that I can record that song. I never knew. And so the day before she died, she calls me from her hospital bed, and she was hooked up to everything and not expected to live, because I talked to her mother. She had her mother dial for her and put the phone, but before her mother told me that she's not well, Michael, and they say that she's not going to make it. And so once again, I had to steel myself from my own emotions as best I could in order to talk with her and try to soothe her and have her tell me anything and everything that she would want to say before she went, along with me just constantly telling her how much I loved her. And I did. I loved her so much. She was truly a daughter to me. And her last words to me was, Daddy, I keep telling you, I'm going to beat this. And I'm going to get well so that you can take me in the studio so I can sing I Never Knew, because that song has brought me through so much from the moment you played it for me years ago. And I said, you just keep getting well, sweetheart. Daddy's here for you, and I'll always be here for you. And she said, well, I think I better go. I'm getting tired. And I told her, I said, you rest, sweetheart. You rest. And Daddy's praying with and for you, and I'll always love you. And I heard her end of the phone go silent. And just now, just sitting here talking to all of you all about this, it brings it all back. But the one thing that I hold on to is that I know someday when God calls me home that I'll see my daughter again, and I'll never have to say goodbye ever, ever again. And that's what sustains me. So I want to end this with saying, I hear her voice everywhere in my heart saying, can I call you Daddy? Peace.